Hello and welcome to this introductory talk on the Biology A-Level course offered at Old Swinford Hospital 6th Form. If you've got any questions from this video, you can contact the subject leader, Mrs. Wakefield, with the contact details being provided in one of the supplementary documents that you've got. Now, if you're wanting to study biology at A-Level, you should start to be thinking more like a biologist. And biologists are scientists who study the natural world and all the living things that are in it, from the largest mammals down to the very microscopic DNA that you'll be studying as part of this A-Level course. Biology allows you to understand more about the range of organisms that are on this planet, how they've developed, how they work, what kind of advances there are in biology at the moment, and where we see the world of biology and the world of biologists going in the 21st century. The A-Level course builds on the knowledge and the understanding and the skills that you've developed on at GCSE level, and it really takes it to an applied setting. This is a really varied and diverse subject, so usually people think biology is just to do with the study of animals and the study of plants, and that's really not the case for the A-Level course. It's very academically rigorous. It incorporates research skills, problem-solving skills, practical endorsement that you'll receive as part of it as well, and those key competencies that employers are looking for. Now, what we would suggest that you do as part of this particular process of planning and preparing for your A-Level studies is that you have a look at the specification which is available online. The specification that we use for A-Level biology is the OCR, so you can have a look at the OCR biology A-Level course, and if you're looking for any revision guides or if you want to get ahead with some of your reading, make sure that it's certified by the OCR exam board. Reason being is because the different exam boards, AQA, EdExcel, OCR, teach slightly different things. Now, the content for the course is divided into 6 different units. So the 6 different units which you've got there I'll talk about in a second, but they're spread over 3 exam papers. And you can see that the marks are quite unusual for this. So you've got paper 1, which is worth 37% of your total A-Level, paper 2, which is worth 37% of your total A-Level, and then unit 3, which is worth 26%. That practical endorsement as well, that non-exam assessment, is reported separately. It's not part of your overall grade, but it's something that you can add and you can showcase to universities to say that you have a practical endorsement as well, and students tend to get their practical endorsement. It's a straightforward exercise as part of the biology A-Level. You do have to showcase a portfolio, you do have to work through it over the course of the 2 years, and you do need to make sure that it's been checked and certified by your teachers. So let's go through each of these particular modules and talk about the kind of things that you'll be studying in each component. So the first thing that you'll be looking at is the foundations in biology, and really that will be building on the content that you've looked at for GCSE study. So looking at the structure of a cell, for example, looking at a cell membrane, but going into more detail. So thinking about those basic structures, those basic diagrams that you looked at GCSE level, now looking at it to a more advanced degree. You'll be looking at things as well like mitosis, and you'll be looking at enzymes as well, and how proteins can attach to them. Again, it's that advanced level that you're now looking at. So it's not necessarily new words or new topics under foundations in biology, it's just knowing it to the standard that's required for a biologist to be looking at. You'll then be looking at exchange and transport. Now, exchange and transport is not just in flora, but in fauna as well. And if you're thinking about the kind of systems that you'll be looking at the cardiovascular system, you'll be looking at water transport, and you'll be looking at an array of different systems within the human body as part of that particular approach. And with that comes a number of practical dissections that you'll have to do. So you'll look, for example, at exchange in fishes, for example, and gills. You'll also look at biodiversity, you'll look at disease and evolution, and that kind of complements one of the future modules, which is on genetics. You'll look at communication, homeostasis, so the process by which our body is balanced, and the transfer of energy as well, so looking specifically at the Krebs cycle. This is processes that perhaps are a little bit new to you at A-level standard, and it's not necessarily things that they've been delivering at the GCSE content. But for all of these particular points, it's worth noting that it's not just enough to know how these systems work, it's about applying it and also using statistical data to inform how these particular processes work. The topic that gets a lot of interest at the A-level course, and it's something that you'll have looked at a basic level at GCSE, is the Genetics, Evolution and Ecosystems module. So as part of that, you'll be looking at the Human Genome Project, you'll be looking at genetic defects, so you'll be looking at things like cystic fibrosis and Huntington's disease. And if you're interested particularly in a career in that area of forensic science or genetics, then this particular module will give you that flavour of those basic foundations that you need to know. The biology department comprises of 3 members of staff, so you've got Mrs. Wakefield, Mrs. Clay Brooks and Mrs. Ablett. And in terms of feedback and things that we know about this particular department from students, the thing that just keeps coming up time and time again is the support that is available from the department. Student feedback and student satisfaction consistently references the amount of support and the valuable level of support that's available to students in lessons and outside of lessons. So students have the option, for example, to work in the labs in study periods, and they have the option to in year 13 to go back into year 12 lessons and have a look at the content that's been provided. Obviously in the current climate of looking at bubbles and with COVID-19, it might not be possible to do that next year, but hopefully by the time you're in year 13, that will still be something that we'll be able to offer. The entry requirements for biology are very clear, and it's really important that you meet obviously the minimum entry requirements for the school, but that your maths grade is a 5 and your English language grade is a 5. The mathematics skills that you use as part of the biology course make up over 20% of the overall A-level biology examination material, so you will have to use your mathematical skills. Now, in conjunction with a strong maths grade and a strong English language grade, you need to ensure that you've got a grade 6 in your biology and a grade 6 in one other science, or a double 6 in your double science overall. Biology can be quite a confusing one when people are looking at the entry requirements. The reason why is because the skill set is very varied. We need you to have good essay writing technique, which the English language would verify. We need you to have strong mathematical understanding to progress to the A-level course, hence the maths grade, and obviously the biology component is really important as well. In terms of our desirable traits, the one that students keep referencing in year 13 and part of the feedback is about the organisation. It's so important that students organise their folders at a very almost within that first week or prepare in advance, because with biology you will have to take a lot of notes. There are lots of new processes, lots of new things to get your head around. If you get into good habits from the start of taking notes in lessons, going away from lesson, transferring that notes into something else, something called dual coding, then what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to use them as part of your own revision resource. Now, as a caveat to the biology course, I spoke to Mrs. Wakefield, she really wanted to stress this particular point, that with that organisation, please bring in lever arch folders. So those are heftier folders rather than folders where you can just put write in your A4 pieces of notes and it won't cover too much content. The benefit of having lever arch folders for biology is because you will have to make a lot of notes, you will have to dual code that information into diagram form, and that will mean that you'll quickly fill up your folders. The lever arch folders are far thicker, they're far more robust, and they're easier to revise from when you need to do that at the end of year 13 and also for the end of year 12 examinations. Mrs. Wakefield also wants to stress that you should be buying a lab coat. It should be long sleeve to the knees and white. You can buy these off Amazon for very cheap, and if you have any problems with that, or if you're waiting for the 16 to 19 bursary scheme, you can wait until September. But if you want to get ahead and you know that you're definitely wanting to do biology, you can buy one of these. My suggestion would be that you buy it after results day. Do not buy your lab coat before, but if you're watching this video at that particular point, after results day, make sure that you've got a lab coat ready. Biology is a course that is known as a facilitating subject. It's one that universities look on incredibly highly. But what actually is really important for students to recognise is that if you want to do certain degrees and you want to follow certain pathways, it is an imperative course. You have to do it. So for medicine, dentistry, veterinary science, these are subject areas where you will need to have biology. There are certain areas as well where it's really advantageous to have biology as an A-level subject. So it might be the case that you're wanting to study chemistry at degree level and you're unsure about doing biology. Well, as part of the biology course, you'll be looking at biochemistry as you would do when you're doing chemistry, and those two are intrinsically interlinked. Doing courses like genetics, for example, or forensic science, or orthotics and optometry or pharmacy, most of those particular courses will specify that you need to do biology A-level. Now, what I would suggest that you do is, if you're a bit unsure about this and you're still umming and ahhing as to whether this is the right course for you, then what I would do is I would have a look at an array of different university websites, look at courses that perhaps you're interested in, and see if they specify biology. You can do that on things like the University of Birmingham webpage, University of Wolverhampton webpage. The pathways that the students tend to go for if they do biology, again, is very varied, like all subjects, but all of our medics, for example, will take biology, all of our vets and all of our dentists as well. And you can see that for our 2019 leavers, you've got a few students there that have gone on to study very competitive courses in medicine, dentistry and veterinary science. And every single year we have a Pathways to Medical programme, which is delivered to students in seminar form. You can watch the separate video on that. But you can also see that students have used biology to support some of their other subject areas. You can see as well that biology and chemistry together as a combination is quite a popular course. But if you're looking at students like Ben, for example, if you're looking at Tom, you know, the subjects which they've combined biology with perhaps aren't the traditional combination. But that's the beauty of biology as a course. It is a facilitating A-level, and the skills that you'll develop there, even if you're not wanting to progress that knowledge further, are really sought after by universities. Now we move on to the summer work which is expected of you, and the bridging tasks which are essential for you to complete before you arrive in September. So to consolidate your GCSE work, we would suggest that you begin with going on to Seneca and having a look at the Biology AQA GCSE higher paper. You don't have to go straight onto the OCR Biology A-level course. We would suggest that you just try and get the foundations right and just go over the Biology GCSE material that you'll have looked at. If you did a different specification, absolutely have a look at them as well. There is also a really good book that's available by CGP. It was available for free for a time period during lockdown. I think they're charging now, but it's a very, very small minimal cost. I think it's maximum £5, and it's called Head Start to A-Level Biology, and it's something that will bridge that gap between GCSE and A-Level. Remember, we're not saying that this is essential for you to do, but if you're really serious and you want to get ahead over the summer period, it would be a really good activity for you to do as some pre-reading. To broaden your subject horizons, there's so many different things that are available online, but these are three that we perhaps would direct your attention to. There's a great BBC Radio 4 podcast that involves Robin Ince and Brian Cox called The Infinite Monkey Cage. If you're doing chemistry as well, if you're doing physics, essentially it's about all matter of scientific topics, and there's a number on there that are really relevant for biology. It doesn't take itself too seriously as a podcast. It's quite humorous at times as well, and it's a good way into looking at some of these big questions, these hot topics in biology at the moment. The Life Scientific podcast is specifically designed to focus in on individuals and the achievements of specific individuals in biology. It's far more serious, and it takes the form of almost like a documentary podcast. There's some great individuals there that you'll recognise, and you'll recognise the names of, that you can pick and choose, and you can have a look at them just to give you that flavour of broadening your subject horizons as a biologist. There's also a fantastic course which is available online. If you type it in, it's from MITx, So that's the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and it's called Introduction to Biology: The Secret of Life, and that will give you a bit of a grounding at the start about biochemistry, but specifically on genetics, and the enrolment actually starts on the 14th of July, so it's perfect timing for you. It's a really reputable place to go, and what we would call this kind of online course, we would call it a MOOC, which stands for Massive Open Online Course. So if you've got time over the summer holidays and you want to have a go at that, that'd be a really good way of showcasing that you're really serious about your biology studies and you want to get ahead. But those particular things, those are things that we're expecting of you, but they're not essential. So we know that you might be doing different things over the holiday, so you don't have to do them. The things that you do have to do is this bridging task, which is essential. So you must do the middle task, and you choose 2 of the other activities from around the outside. So the thing that Mrs. Wakefield and Mrs. Clay Brooks and Mrs. Ablett really want you to get sorted before you arrive in September is to summarise the role of the following aspects of an organelle. So I'm not going to read through all of them, but those are key definitions that you need to understand as part of the foundations of the biology course. And if you spend a bit of time over the summer doing that, then you'll hit the ground running in September. So that's the thing that you have to do. You can do that in in any form that you want. You might want to do it in a PowerPoint. You might want to do it as part of a flashcard. That might be a useful exercise to test yourself. You might want to do it as a Word document. The other activities around the outside, you choose 2 of them. So you could create a timeline of events and development of cell theory. You could compare optical transition electronic microscopes and scanning electron microscopes as well, how they're used, how they're different. Would be useful perhaps to do that as a PowerPoint. You could, if it's possible, and actually most of these things are available online as well now, obtain a copy of the Biological Science Review or New Scientist and have a read of one of the articles and just provide a brief summary, or what we call a Pressy summary of it. Again, that would be a useful reading activity for you to do. You could discuss with 2 members of your family their thoughts on the genetic code being accessible by government bodies, including GPs. It's an interesting debate, and it's something very recent. It was actually sparked by some work of the University of Leicester, so it's an English process this, but have a look and see what their thoughts are, and maybe before you speak to them, go online and you can always give them some additional information if they're not quite sure. Write a 300-word response, that's about half a page, to the title "Advances in Genetics Will Underpin Future Medical Practice." Now, what you'll have to do as part of that is try and think about the ways in which genetics can impact on future biological developments and future biological technology. That's really important right now in the midst of a global pandemic, and you might want to think about where genetics can go, and as part of that you might even want to consider the ethical implications of it. We'd like as well perhaps for you to find images of cells in metaphase and anaphase and produce scientific drawings of what you observe. That's something that you will be doing at A-level standard, but you can get ahead and you can get ahead with that particular topic, so when it comes up you already have a good understanding. It's a lovely summer, obviously, and currently as I'm recording this it's chucking it down with rain, but if it's a bit of a heat wave over the next few weeks, you might want to go outside. You might want to observe 5 different plants, 5 different invertebrate species that are in your garden. Use the internet or your phone application to identify them, and try and work out how they're structured and perhaps what makes them unique compared to other plant species and other invertebrate. And finally, something that would really consolidate that GCSE knowledge, a really useful exercise: create a revision poster or a video on protein synthesis. This is something you will do as part of your Foundations of Biology study. So a very straightforward but very important and useful exercise for you to do. If you've got any questions following this particular talk, you can contact the subject leader, Mrs. Wakefield, or myself. And if you have a bit of time before your next video, I'd suggest that you have a look at some of those podcasts, that MIT course, and make sure that you complete the form that's at the bottom of this particular video. Thank you very much for listening.